What is up, Outlap F1 Nation? This will be Season 6, Episode 18 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's the 2024 Monaco GP and also Indy 500 race review show. You've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight. It is often said to be the greatest weekend in all of motorsport, and I think for the most part it lived up to it. But Cody, how'd you survive it, and how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Just getting done, enjoying the long weekend. Got a little bit of barbecue ribs from my fiance's dad today, so it was great day for barbecuing. But yeah, as far as the race goes, well, I'm sure we're going to get into it. Some of it was awful, some of it was fantastic, and yeah, I think I've got once more to say about IndyCar than about Formula One from the weekend.
Yeah, well, we'll get into all that in just a little bit. Just a little bit. That's a good tease there. But you can find our show as always, and if you found us for the first time, welcome along. You can find us on, I guess it's now officially X.com, Twitter. You find us there. We put stuff out all the time. Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you can see our link tree in our show notes. If you're on YouTube and you like what you're seeing and you enjoy what you're hearing, you can do what all the fun kids and the cool kids do. You can smash that subscribe button, or you can leave us a like, or you can click the 5-star button on your favorite podcasting app, specifically Apple Podcasts or Spotify. What does that do? One, it makes you cool, but two, it just allows us to come up a little bit better in search results and allows us to spread our net a little bit out in the world of the webs here. So thank you. So if you'd like to email the show, chat now at outlapf1.com. We'll take you there. Thank you so much to our continued monetary supporters, including Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of what we call the hashtag Outlap F1 Nation, you can see our link in our show notes. It's an anchor page, $1, $5. All goes into making the show better. All goes into either upgrading equipment that we already have, because they come up with new versions that sometimes work better, or buying new equipment that we would like to have. So whatever the case is, it's all going to go into making the show better. That's what we want to do. So we would appreciate if you'd like to support us in that regard. Just as a last reminder, you can use our code OUTLAP and get you 20% off and free shipping with the good folks at Manscaped. You can check out their wonderful line of product there. All right. The particulars now out of the way. We shall start with our headlines of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first. I like yours. What you got?
My headline is Leclerc's Monaco curse is finally broken. It was certainly a feel-good moment seeing his elation as he won his home Grand Prix after a series of near misses. And it's a good thing that he won it, because it was pretty much the only saving grace for this snooze fest of a race.
Yeah, my on-track headline is Charles in Charge. There was actually a sitcom from the 1980s by the same title, and I would say Charles was in charge pretty much all weekend, from the first practice to the end of the race. He was clearly the best driver around Monaco this weekend, and a much-deserved win all the way around. And my other headline is, just in terms of Monaco in general, something has got to give. The qualifying is so fun, and the race is so frustrating. We have to come up with a medium between the two. We're smart people. Formula One engineers are really smart. We should be able to frickin' solve this problem. I've heard a lot of different suggestions. We may come up with one or two of our own later on in the show. But yeah, we ought to be able to try to solve this problem, because the race is such a frustrating watch. And even from the onboards, it's still a frustrating watch. And the timings, it's a frustrating watch. And you think you got enough of a gap to maybe do a pit stop. And then you had kind of, well, when we get to it, the perfect storm of how to make Monaco extra frustrating happened. And, that's a racing thing, and that sometimes happens, but it's damn, was it a frustrating watch. Oi! All right. Well, we shall start our recap of the action on the track with the qualifying review, which was, I would say, where the fun part was of the weekend. So let me get this teed up here. All right. So, bit of an addendum here to your on-track action. There were two actually non-classified qualifiers. Those were the Haas drivers, so their times actually did not count. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Starting on P18 was Zhao Guanyu. P17 was Valtteri Bottas in a very frustrating week for the Kick Sauber team. P16, one of the other shocks of qualifying, not able to get out of Q1, Sergio Checo Perez. Wow. P15 turned out to be Logan Sargent. P14, Fernando Alonso. P13, Lance Stroll. P12, Daniel Ricciardo. And P11 was Esteban Ocon. P10, the top 10 from 10 to 1, Pierre Gasly making Q3 for Alpine. Hey, nice job there. P9, Alex Albon in the Williams. Hey, nice job there. Punching above the weight there. P7 was Lewis Hamilton. P6, bit of a shocker here. Not a good weekend for Red Bull at all. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P5, George Russell. P4, Lando Norris. P3, Carlos Sainz. P2, Oscar Piastri in the McLaren Senna livery. Effort there. And in P1 with a lap time of 1:10.270, just off the track record, was Charles Leclerc in that Ferrari, absolutely sending it all the way around the walls of Monaco on Saturday. All right, so just to kind of recap, Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg, I think were like 12th and 15th or something, respectively. They had their times basically deleted and were disqualified from qualifying due to a post-session technical infringement. The rear wing measured too far open when the DRS was enabled and was not in compliance with regulations. And that means your times are gone and you are out of qualifying. So frustration for Haas for sure. But Cody, big thoughts on the fun part of the weekend, the qualifying session. What'd you think?
Oh, it was disappointing that the Haas got disqualified, but rightly so. It was technical infringement, and it, as we're going to get into, ended up setting the stage for the only other exciting part of the race, other than Leclerc winning, was because we had Magnussen and we had Perez right by each other. Speaking of Perez, it looks really bad that he did not make it out of Q1, but you have to look at it a little more closely because, as we saw during this qualifying, it was incredibly close with the timing. I mean, Verstappen, made it out of Q1 with plenty of room to spare, and Perez missed out, and they only had, I think, around 0.3 seconds of a difference between the two of them. So yeah, that tiny little bit was the difference between making it comfortably and not. So yeah, while it does look really bad on him for qualifying that far back, and Monaco is the last place you want to do that because it's really, really hard to pass, really hard to overtake. I'm still not on the will Perez lose his seat train because he's had a couple, pretty bad ones in a row. That's fair to be said. And this is right around when it started happening last year. And he had a massive slump through the whole middle of the season pretty much. But I still feel that he could pull it together because, like I said, timing really wasn't that far behind. He probably wasn't much farther behind Verstappen than he would be on a non-Monaco race weekend. And it's just the fact that everyone was so close together for this race that he missed it out a little bit, and that was all it took.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, there were lots of people who were having some very dicey Q1s. I mean, number one, the traffic situation with all 20 cars on track at the same time made trying to get just a clean lap in pretty hard in certain cases. And then you had cars doing lots of different things with respect to the tires. Some were going on a regular out lap and then just going straight into a timed lap. And others were doing kind of an out lap, then a prep lap, then a fast lap. So it was really hard to kind of tell. I felt for all of the race engineers who were watching around, and they're like, well, we think this guy's on a time lap, but we're not sure. So, and then of course you don't want to be impeding anybody either. So, it was difficult. And then add to that, another thing I just tended to notice throughout the practices, and especially in the first set of qualifying. Now they fixed this for the race on Sunday, but these advertisements that are line the walls of the track, because we have ground effect cars that literally suck air into and underneath them, they were coming loose and coming off at, I guess the British phrase would be at a rate of not, and they were causing debris and it was causing issues. One guy who I know got caught out, Lando Norris, got caught out with it and had to abort his fast lap, come in, have it removed. Luckily, it didn't screw up any of the geometry of the wing or anything else. They let him back out. He was right at the death, would not have made it out of Q1 either if he didn't get his last lap in when he did. So, it was, I don't want to say that this was, you look at it on the surface of it, this is the Sergio Perez who, we're after Miami, and now he tends to go away and he fades out, and now his seat's in jeopardy, and, let the merry-go-round start up again. I'm not there yet. I think aggregate with where he's been relative to his teammate this season so far, I think he's still getting a passing grade. I don't think it's the A- that it was at the beginning of the season. I think we're now looking at a B- ish. He's still got some margin to play with, but these next few races for him, I would say the next 5 races are for him are going to be, that's where you're going to get your read. These are tracks that he knows, these tracks he's all been to. There's nothing weird about any of these next circuits coming up. And if he's not, putting out at that point, then I think we can have this conversation about, what do you do with his seat? But for now, I think he's safe. It just kind of sucks. It was, I would write this off to more of a Monaco thing than anything else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just the drivers talk about how Monaco is like the true test of your ability getting around the track for that qualifying, and it's really easy to mess it up. We see how close they get to the barriers. It does not take much to ruin your lap here. Beyond what Perez did, it was a little crazy to see Fernando Alonso not get out of Q1 either, although it was very, very, again, very, very close margins. A little interesting to see Logan Sargent out-qualify Perez. I'm thinking that might almost sting a little bit more than the being out in Q1. But as far as the other side of the spectrum, good qualifying efforts, Oscar Piastri had an awesome qualifying, really showed his abilities on one lap pace, put himself on the front row and in excellent position to try to make Monaco his first Grand Prix victory. So I found him to be very impressive, and doing it in that special livery car just kind of made it all the more exciting.
Yeah, I mean, great efforts from I think all of the top 4, including even George Russell. By the way, the Mercedes came to play. And that was interesting to see, where all of a sudden where they were up there and in the mix. And I actually thought, through Q2, I'm like, this actually feels like a pretty darn democratic qualifying. Everybody seemed like they could put something together at one point of one of those sessions and had a shot, and it was just going to be kind of who could do it over the long haul. And really the top 2 teams won out kind of at the end of the day here between what Ferrari was able to do and what McLaren were able to do. And I just got to tip my cap to Charles Leclerc on his last lap, which Piastri, if he doesn't do this on the last lap, Piastri could have taken pole. A 35-1 middle sector, which is just amazing. Like, nobody else was even close to that. Like, I was excited when I saw Piastri do a 35-4 through there. So, I mean, the first sector, they were pretty much kind of neck and neck. There are even times during that lap where Piastri is ahead, but it turns out, the end of the second sector is the swimming pool, and that chicane coming out of the tunnel. That's where Leclerc really, really, truly made that qualifying effort stick and eked out that extra tenth or two that proved to be definitive. But yeah, I mean, really strong from, I say, all the top. I would go even all the way to Verstappen, even in the top 6. We never got a chance to see what Verstappen's final Q3 lap was going to be because he hit the wall. So, we never know, like, could he have wrangled a lap time out of it, because he was definitely trying to do it. So we never got a chance to see what that lap could have been or would have been. But yeah, I mean, for a qualifying session in general, it was tense throughout. It was nervous throughout. I got pretty much everything that I could have possibly wanted. And it was fun to watch it on the timings, and the timings would light up. And then you'd see these random guys would shoot up to the top of the board at a certain point as the track was evolving. So, I mean, but that's great. And the other thing is they're running multiple laps. They're not running, it's not one shot and then that's it. The soft tire was giving you multiple cracks at this. So, very enjoyable qualifying session all the way around for
sure. Most exciting part for me was probably when we saw that message come across the screen from Max Verstappen's radio that said he hit the wall, because at that point you're like, oh my God, he's not going to get it. It's going to be somebody else. And as we saw during the race, not a whole lot changed from the qualifying order, which is kind of par for the course for Monaco. So, the fact that Max was qualified down in 6 really pretty much ruined his chances at even getting on the podium, much less winning the race.
Yeah, and before we leave this, shout out to one Pierre Gasly for ringing whatever that car had in it. He doesn't crack the 110s. Both Gasly and Albon for cracking the 110s in Q3. I thought both those guys did an amazing job just to get there. Some guys were having some off sessions, and they were able to pounce on it. So for teams that haven't had a whole lot of things good we can say about them, for Williams and Alpine, this was a welcome respite and a good result for them for sure. All right. Well, there goes the fun part. Now we have to talk about Sunday running, the race itself, which was, you go into a Monaco weekend and what you think you're going to see. You're expecting not a whole lot of overtaking. We talked about this, in our preview. We weren't going to expect a whole lot. But then you kind of get the perfect storm of and then you realize that, about halfway through, we're like, oh, we're really in the scenario here. This is not going to coalesce or move. But anyway, we'll get into it. We'll talk about the first lap, which was where if you want action, that's really all where it was. Actually, one little scary moment, but luckily all rocked away and everybody was okay. But we shall start with the back markers, and those back markers include 3 names: Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, Nico Hülkenberg in the other Haas, and Sergio Perez, whose entire Monaco Grand Prix lasted about 800 meters, maybe. If you count how much they slid, maybe that was part of it. But also not finishing after a later on lap 1 incident was the other Alpine of Esteban Ocon, who we will definitely have to talk about because there was some post-race drama going on in that team for there. The classified finishers, P16 was Zhao Guanyu in the Kick Sauber, P15 was Logan Sargent in the Williams, P14 was Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, and P13 was Valtteri Bottas in the other Kick Sauber. I guess the first thing we should do is we should say we had 2 starts. We had the first one. The first one saw the big wreck, which involves Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, and Sergio Perez. And then that was an instant red flag, and that was totally the right call. There was so much debris on the track. There was nothing else you could do other than to stop it. So we had about a 35-minute or so delay. They came back out. Of course, now you're in your red flag rules, which means everybody gets to change tires. So everybody who started on mediums went to the hard tire, and everybody who started on the hard tire went to the medium tire. So that killed your strategy game or your undercut, overcut, outlap, inlap. Sometimes that's the fun part of Monaco, was watching that whole thing happen. No Valtteri Bottas 3-day pit stop on the cards, it seemed, today. But let's talk about the lap one incidents. There were two of them. First one, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, and Perez. Cody, what'd you see, and how'd you break it down?
So this incident was really the meat and potatoes of this race, because it was 95% of the excitement that we saw in this race, and it pretty much determined how the rest of the race was going to go, like you said. So we've got normal condensed mob of cars going into the first couple turns at Monaco, and then going up the hill. Magnussen had a little bit of a run on Perez, enough so that he thought he could try to sneak his car between Perez and the guardrails there. And what we've seen is that it's not really like racing at a normal circuit when you're going up the hill there, because it's not just a straight shot. The guardrail kind of waves in and out a little bit. It's not going to be perfectly sized for that car going all the way up. And so he didn't have a lot of room to make that move on Perez in the first place. I don't know if Perez just didn't see him or thought that he would maybe take the wiser move and back out before anything got hairy. But all it took was a little squeeze from Perez against Magnussen that caused Perez to pretty much turn into Magnussen into that guardrail. And then Magnussen pushes him a pretty significant distance and flips the car all the way around. And it was pretty nasty once we saw the replays on camera. It was really pretty looked like a pretty high impact crash. And the wreck of Perez's car afterwards was pretty stunning. Like, it was fantastic that we saw that he was okay right away. The cameras didn't even really pan to the incident right away. I think they kind of waited until he was out and okay to show us the wreck. But yeah, like 3 out of the 4 wheels gone. The car is pretty much completely destroyed. And as part of this, I think Perez's car kind of flew out, and I can't remember exactly whose car flew out and hit Hulkenberg. But since he was at the back with these guys, he got wrapped up in this as well. And so his race was done before half a lap had been completed as well, through no fault of his own. And then, yeah, like you said, this wreck was nasty. They threw out the red flag quite quickly because there was nothing else they could do. There was so much debris on the track from the incidents that cars weren't going to be able to go through there. And that really set the tone for the rest of the race because, as you said, red flag means everyone goes in, they can do car repairs, they can change tires, and that tire change, it counts for the rules. It doesn't say anything about that you need to have a formal pit stop in the rules. You just need to use 2 compounds of tire. And anyone who went out on their first lap, they had on 1 compound of tire, and then they changed to a different compound for the next restart. That's all they needed. They ran, half a lap on 1 compound, and for a lot of them, they ran 77 and a half laps on a different compound, and that counted. This red flag also really saved Carlos Sainz because he, in the whole tussle that was the opening of the race, I don't exactly remember how it happened, but he did, I believe, end up getting a flat by rubbing with somebody else. And
Piastri.
Yeah, okay, so he got a flat rubbing with Piastri. He ends up having to take the little escape area because of the flat, and you can see the sparks shooting out the back of his car. You thought he was done, but he was able to return to the pits under his own power, and that red flag, again, really saved him because A, he got to make any repairs that they needed to, he got a free tire change, and they just pretty much, I don't know if I really agree whether this is fair or not, but they established the restart order for him to be back in 3rd place where he qualified. So, yeah, big save for Carlos Sainz. He ends up converting that luck into a podium, which we'll get to later. But big save from him for this incident as well.
Yeah, I mean, a few different rules to kind of just go over to try to understand why things happened the way that they did. So the first thing that happens when the incident happens is obviously there's waved double yellow flags. At that point, it's on race control as to what they want to do. They can either pull out a safety car or then red flag the race. Meanwhile, of course, as that incident is still happening, you're still under the double yellows in Sector 1. Those 3 cars never get out of Sector 1. Meanwhile, the train is continuing, and they get all the way to almost out of the tunnel at the front. And they throw the red flag when LECLERC almost hits what you would call swimming pool 1, which is where you can just start to see the swimming pool. Now that LECLERC is actually, that's the start of Sector 3. So where the leader was is not the determining factor. It's where the last car who's on the track, how far did that car make it? That means because those 3 cars, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Perez, did not get out of Sector 1, that makes that decision pretty much automatic for race control to we go back to the previous lap. Because we had no lap, the only other order we could have done was therefore the qualifying order. So that, as you're right, does save Carlos Sainz, who had to tussle with Oscar Piastri. Piastri was on the outside. Sainz was trying to cut on the inside of the very first turn. It didn't work. I think it was floor hits tire. Tire didn't make it at the end of that. Piastri suffers some floor damage. Was able to get a lot of it fixed, but not all of it. So he was kind of running a little compromised, but not enough to where it was very material until basically the end of the race is kind of where you kind of saw the difference once LECLERC actually did finally hit the go button. But that's why we ended up with that order. It's where the last car is. If they get out of Sector 1 and once all 20 of them do it, that's when they can actually say, well, this is our new grid. So just wanted to clear up why the rule was the way that it was, because it was confusing. Because at first I thought, oh, well, look at that. Sainz is out. Lando's going to get a podium, 2 and 3. I like this. I was sitting pretty. And then they came up and did it. But it makes sense when you think about it in that way that, hey, it's the last car that's got to get out of that first sector before they can change the ordering there. So what we ended up with on the second restart was basically anybody who didn't make it falls to the back. Everyone who then is still running can move up to replace those that didn't make it. You don't have the blank spots on the grid necessarily. But then they restarted, and obviously what we saw, for the most part, especially amongst the top 4, was 78 and a half laps on the same compound of tire. So anyway, that was kind of your lap 1. Now, the incident we haven't covered. When we did our Miami review, we said we almost had Alpine on Alpine violence, and somehow they managed to get through a very tight corner without having any incident. They were not so lucky here. Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly had a coming together in I think the Portier corner coming out of there, where Ocon is on the inside, Gasly is on the outside. They're heading into the tunnel, and Ocon is sticking his nose probably where it doesn't belong, hits Gasly's tire, and then basically goes up. Now, that's kind of a scary incident because the tunnel is like right there. So I think that was actually the scarier of the two. Ocon falls back down. He has big damage. When they red flagged it, he managed to get back. They put the car on the lift there, but they were not able to repair it in time, and that was Ocon's race done. Ocon was later assessed the equivalent of a 10-second penalty for that incident. Interestingly enough, the first incident that we talked about had no action by the stewards. Kind of another talking point on those things as well. Because Ocon could not serve that penalty in the race, he now is subject to a 5-place grid drop at the next race that he runs in. And we're not necessarily really sure when that's going to be, because there was a lot of post-race Alpine drama. Apparently, Bruno Famin, the Alpine team principal, was seen. The words I was hearing was apoplectic at Esteban Ocon for the Alpine on Alpine contact. That's a major, major league no-no, especially at a race where they could have scored. As it turns out, Pierre Gasly does score a point on the day, but the point is definitely made clear to Esteban. He put out a tweet apologizing later on in the day. I don't know if it's been enough. The big rumor mill is now, do we potentially see Alpine bench Esteban Ocon for a weekend in favor of one Jack Doohan, which would mean that Alpine's penalty could then potentially carry over into Austria. Interesting. Cody, your thought on the Alpine on Alpine violence and all the fallout from that?
I think that we're looking at it, through a microscope because it was teammates making this collision. And yes, the move from Ocon was opportunistic. He's, we've heard and have seen on Drive to Survive that Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly do not get along very well. They have not gotten along with each other for a long time, and they ended up in this team together in a perfect French situation where you got two French drivers driving for the French team. Looks great on paper, except then they have to get along with each other. So they race each other very hard, I think, partly because of that they really want to prove that they're the better of the two. And maybe that was showing here a little bit that Ocon wanted to get past Gasly in that instant and was willing to make the move because he thought this is really probably the best chance I'm going to get all race. And yeah, it was opportunistic. Could have potentially ruined both of their races. He's lucky that he didn't get hurt from that incident because, like you said, his car flew up quite high. You and I saw an incident like that in the W Series a couple years ago when we were at COTA 2021, and there ended up being some broken vertebra from that incident. So he's lucky he didn't get hurt, and only his race was ruined. What I don't really agree with from the fallout from this, and I'll get into the Alpine stuff, their drama in a second. I don't really agree with the seeming inconsistency between giving Ocon a penalty for his incident and not giving Magnussen a penalty for that incident. And it's not, wouldn't even say I really think that Magnussen deserves a penalty. You could call his move opportunistic as well. That he's riding on so many penalty points right now that he should really be taking it easy, not making risky moves like that because he's so close to a race ban. But I think you could chalk that up to a racing incident because the FIA seems willing to chalk up a lot of things that happen on the first lap as a racing incident because it's crazy. You got everyone all close together, jockeying for position right out of the get-go there. There's a lot of stuff that's just going to happen because you're so close together. I think you could make the same argument, though, about the Ocon incident. I think you could make the argument that, hey, it's opportunistic. It's the best chance you're going to get all race. He went for it, and it just didn't work out. He lost control of the car a little bit, understeered, and it didn't work out for him. So I think you should probably be consistent with how you rate these two incidents. And yet we've got Magnussen not getting reviewed any further. They just chalked that up to a racing incident. And you get Ocon getting what's going to be a fairly severe penalty because 10 seconds is, pretty bad as it is, especially at a place like Monaco. But since he couldn't serve that, now he's taking a 5-place grid drop, which is pretty severe. And I just don't think that there was that big a difference in the responsibility for those incidents. I think you should either make them both penalties or you should make them both not penalties in this case. And I think there's probably a little bit of that looking at Magnussen is so close to a ban and really, really not wanting him to get the ban that influenced that decision of them saying, look, we're gonna overlook this one because we don't want to actually give you a race ban. We've seen in the past that the FI seemingly goes through significant lengths to avoid giving drivers bans. And I think that maybe played a little bit of a part here.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly part of, I think, the general discussion in all of this. The thing that annoys me is one incident got looked at right away. The Ocon one gets looked at, investigated, noted, all that. And then the other one seemingly was cleared before we even went back to racing. And I even got into a couple arguments with a couple people during it where they say the turn one incident, oh, that can't be the Magnussen thing. That's the Sainz Piastri thing. No, the stewards came out, or the race director came out and said, we're not even referring that to the stewards. It's no further investigation, not an investigation with no further action. Now, if you want to say that that's a turn lap one melee, stuff happens, fine, but it should have been noted, investigated, however they wanted to do it, make a decision and stand by that decision. I disagree with one not even getting looked at and the other one having the book thrown at him because of it. At least if you had done that, you have something that we can at least refer to and get an answer as to why you did what you did. But when you don't even pick it up to look at it, I mean, that, and if you're right, and that's because K-Mag is on the penalty points, well, guess what? K-Mag earned those penalty points. He's in that situation through, some of it is a team thing, but he's in that a lot of that situation because of the actions that he did behind the wheel of a race car. I don't want to see a race ban. I like K-Mag. I root for K-Mag a lot, and when he was in IMSA and in other places as well. I think he's a hell of a nice guy off the track, but you gotta be in a little bit better control. I don't know that I see a fault in the Magnussen Hülkenberg Perez thing. I do think it was K-Mag saying, I have a potential for a gap. I'm going to shoot it up, and I'm going to hope that Sergio moves over. Sergio didn't, and this is what we ended up with. Is that enough to give the guy a race ban over? Maybe not, but I was with Hülkenberg's take of the whole thing. Like, the whole move is unnecessary. You don't have to do that there. Yes, overtaking is very hard, but there would have been other occasions to try to get a position or two. And, I would have thought discretion would have been the better part of valor there, but, just didn't work out that way. The Ocon thing is a silly move. It's probably worthy of some action. I don't know that it's worthy of him getting benched, other than this is Bruno Famine trying to come in and say, I'm the boss and you guys will listen when we tell you something, which is important. And we've seen Alpine messaging not always being consistent. So at least that seems to try to rectify that. So we'll have to see. We'll follow this Jack Doohan potential story, and it would be a bit of a blockbuster if it ends up happening, especially given that both of their drivers are free agents in the merry-go-round after this season. So, lots of drama at Alpine for sure. All right, so we will now move into the midfield, and that midfield saw P12 was Daniel Ricciardo. P11, just missing out on points, was Fernando Alonso. P10, the Alpine that kept running and did score a point, was Pierre Gasly. P9, the Williams of Alex Albon, gets them off the donut and gives them their first 2 points on the season as well. P8, there he is again, Yuki Tsunoda in the V-Carb, just doing what he does, man. Nice, consistent stuff here. P7 was Lewis Hamilton. P6, unable to do anything after the qualifying effort, Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P5 was George Russell, and the P4 finisher was also where he started, Lando Norris in the first McLaren. So, Cody, thoughts on the midfield? This is usually where we have lots of drama. There was some, but not a ton.
Yeah, I feel like this was kind of like a desert throughout the whole race. It wasn't really a whole lot going on. There was a couple small things that happened. So we did have a couple places in the race where drivers were holding up the field, seemingly in an attempt to get their teammate a gap for a free pit stop. And I believe we saw Fernando Alonso hold up the field pretty significantly for Lance Stroll to get a free pit stop and, try to get some fresh tires to start making some moves. He didn't get very far because, unfortunately for Lance Stroll, not too long after that pit stop, he did get a flat, which pretty much ruined any efforts that they had made over the course of half the race to make that happen, which is really unfortunate. I don't think. I think what was it? He actually. I think it kind of was his fault. If I remember correctly, he smacked the barrier, pretty hard, and that gave him the flat. So, too bad that they put all that effort into making that strategy work, and it just never came to fruition. Similar efforts were made for, I believe, Lewis Hamilton trying to get a pit stop. Lewis Hamilton takes a pit stop in the middle of the race. He comes in, gets his tire changed, goes out, and now you're going to want to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe on the radio they told him normal outlap is what I've been seeing, is that Bono told Lewis Hamilton it's a normal outlap. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen comes into pit on the following lap, so pretty much right after Lewis Hamilton pits, and he gets in, he gets his tires changed, and he makes it back out in front of Hamilton. And there's this whole, kind of controversy going on between, Hamilton and Mercedes right now, where there seemingly is an erosion of trust between them. And Hamilton comes on the radio and says, "Why didn't you guys tell me that outlap was critical?" Because it was a pretty legitimate chance, one of the very few that there was, for positions to be gained on pit stops, because only a couple pit stops in this race. And he didn't make it happen, seemingly because he didn't know that he should be pushing on his outlap, and seemingly the team didn't tell him. I've heard some argument that it's kind of getting tongue-tied there. Heard some argument that it should be obvious that you should be pushing on your outlap, but why would you if there's no position to be gained? I think that this was a big-time dropped ball by Mercedes. That they had something that could work to get a few more points out of this, and they didn't make it happen. Either they didn't realize that he needed to push harder to get past Max, or they just neglected to tell him. But yeah, there's definitely a drop ball there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you that Mercedes did something not necessarily right, because if you tell a driver a normal outlap, what that generally will communicate to them is you want to bring the tire in. The modern understanding of the Pirelli rubber is that if you push them within the first couple of laps almost too hard, you almost weaken the overall life of the tire by almost like half. So that tire will still perform, but it's not going to perform long enough, or the length of that performance is going to get severely hindered if you're leaning on them immediately. So a lot of times you're going to be kind of cautious on your outlap. You're not going to be giving it 100% pace. What you'll see is a lot of teams, when they bring people in for the pit stop, will tell their driver, use up whatever's left of the tire, because they know the outlap has to have the tire getting brought in. And usually as they're trundling down the pit lane, they'll get some instruction on, hey, you're either going to, we're racing so-and-so, close at exit. That tells the driver, hey, I got to push here. Or two, if they told them bring the tire in, or normal outlap procedure, that would tend to indicate, well, we're just going to roll through the corners in the first one. We're going to bring that tire, we're going to bring it up to its nice, happy temperature, and then we can push on it. It looked like Max caught wind of the Lewis stop, didn't want to wait. They brought him in on the next lap to cover it. Definitely got him out in front of Lewis. We'll never know, had Lewis been pushing all the way through that lap, had he actually been able to make that move stick, or an overtake stick there. So yeah, definitely a bit of a dropped ball by, I would say, the Mercedes team, but that was about as much fun as it was. Max tried to go for an undercut on George Russell, and if you wanted an indictment of why modern day Monaco doesn't necessarily work with these cars, Max Verstappen on ridiculously young tires, unable to get around George Russell, who was running on 77 and a half lap old mediums, unable to make that happen. And kudos to George, because he was actually kind of the linchpin that stopped the top four from playing any games with each other, because where he would drop, he was boomeranging between, at the end of it, I think he only finishes 8 seconds or so behind Lando Norris. But at one point it was 15 seconds, and they said you needed 20 seconds to get a pit stop. And so it would boomerang, it would get to like 17, 18, and then George would run a few hot laps on his tire and use some of the life up on it, and it would come back down to like 13, 14 seconds. So it was kind of an odd peekaboo game with people that they weren't necessarily racing, how it kind of played out. But yeah, I mean, kudos to George. That was a tire preservation kind of masterclass, because everyone thought because they started on the hard tire and were forced to go on the medium after the red flag. Everyone thought Mercedes was cooked. Turns out not to be the case there. So good on George. Kind of a frustrating weekend, I think, overall for Lewis, obviously, with the opportunity to maybe undercut Max that didn't happen there. As for my team, the McLarens, also very frustrating to watch, because the Ferraris were doing an awesome job of maintaining just enough track position on them to where they had pace in reserve if the McLarens would try to push. There was no real opportunities to make any sort of dive bomb moves. I saw there was one time Lando got, I think, within 0.2 of signs going into Rascast. That just wasn't enough to make a legit move there. So it's very frustrating onboard watch. And then Piastri kind of near the end, after Leclerc did kind of do the we're just going to go fast now, we're done saving, didn't have the overall race pace to keep up with him, either because, one, that damage from that lap one collision with Sainz was just a bit too much, or his tires were starting to go. We'll never know. But the bottom line is none of those positions changed, so we might as well just go right into the podium. That podium was Carlos Sainz in P3, Oscar Piastri comes home in P2, and the homeboy does good. A great last lap by Alex Jakes on the F1 TV side of the coverage. I thought it was very nice, poetically done, man. Your chef's kiss to that last lap. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, a hometown victory. 2024 may be the year of the happy winner yet again. Look at that. So if nothing else, that was the redeeming factor on kind of a frustrating watch, but that was pure joy. To watch Leclerc do the dive into his team was just as fun as for me in Miami, to be honest with you. So I was enjoying that throughout that. Leclerc was very happy, as well he should be. He was the best driver all weekend.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job managing the race. He did have some of the question marks taken out at the very beginning, because I think one of the few things he was worried about was, how's the pit stop cycle going to go? And that was taken out of the equation very quickly. All he had to do was, make sure his hard tires could last the entire race distance. And that did provide some kind of like tantalizing moments during the race, because he was definitely not pushing the car at all in the earlier stages of the race. He was doing as much as he could to preserve the tires so that he would have enough at the end. And you had Piastri sometimes very, very close to Leclerc, and you're kind of wondering, man, is he gonna go for it because he knows that there's not going to be many chances? Is he just gonna like make a dive bomb the next chance that he thinks it could happen? Fortunately, no such thing happened, which is probably good decision making from Piastri, because so far this year we've seen him have some pretty rotten luck, some results that could have been, should have been, but weren't. And I think out of this one, while it would have been awesome for him to be able to say, yeah, I won my first full Grand Prix at Monaco, I think he's happy at this point getting the P2 podium. I believe this is his first podium of the year, which is pretty crazy because Lando's had some really strong finishes. But that just goes to show you that, I think Oscar's been screwed by luck at some point so far. So, yeah, he looked to be, pretty happy with where he finished. Leclerc was like out of this world. happy with how things turned out, as he should be. The podium celebration was pretty fun to see. It looked like even the king was getting really into it. Had some champagne he was spraying, and obviously, I love to see the Italian national anthem go anytime Ferrari wins. They all get so into it, and just overall a great feel good moment. I was very happy to see him win it. He was pretty much who I wanted to win the Grand Prix because he had the best opportunity, and it's always great to see drivers win their home Grand Prix because they're so excited for it. All the fans really lean into it. So yeah, I would say that was the best part of what was a very boring race. But yeah, great performance by Piastri, great recovery, I guess you could say, from Sainz from being what looked like out of the race to pulling together on the second restart and managing the race perfectly well for a double Ferrari podium. So get this guy a drive for next season, please.
Yeah, I mean, where he's going to go I still think that's the linchpin to everything. I mean, it seems Mercedes is no longer really in contention. It seems Red Bull those windows seem to be closing quicker than they're opening. And now Williams has apparently entered the fray, along with then that would lead Audi. And now Williams is a potential place where he could go. So, it's going to be so interesting to see where he finally does end up going, because he's either going to price himself out of the market he's trying to make, or he's going to have to do kind of a long-term give to get later. And he's one of the he's not an old driver on the grid by any stretch, but he's one of the more seasoned drivers on the grid. And if you're telling him that it's going to be another 2 or 3 years before he's going to be able to win races again, you obviously want to win now. He's definitely in win now mode. That has been made pretty clear. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to get fascinating where he's going to go, because and I've said this before, I think once that move gets announced, you're going to watch the dominoes go boom, 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 because everybody's going to want to get their houses in order for next year to try to make sure that the 26 off season is as light and as drama free as is humanly possible, because all of these cars are now changing. All of the power units are changing. So it's a massive, massive reset of what the competitive order is. And all the teams, what they're trying to do now is to set themselves up as best they can, so that once January 1 of next year happens, they can get going on these 26 regulations and to really, really try to maximize that, because you're definitely, I think, going to see some competitive order changes for sure. But just to go on Leclerc, I thought the video of him going in the water was just amazing. Full in
Leclerc.
head first dive. That was, I even tweeted it. Those were some happy humans right there. So boring race, great race, don't really care. I love moments like that. That's why you're in it, is for stuff like that. So kudos to, and just, throughout the course of the weekend, they were that little tick in front of McLaren. And I think where this race ended up was pretty much where the real competitive order was. I'm excited again that McLaren was able to take a fight to a top team, that they were right there. And good on Piastri to get, hopefully a confidence boosting drive, a drive that tells him, hey, you can preserve those tires. He went 77 and a half laps on a set of tires in Monaco and didn't get overtaken. Good on you there. And Sainz was trying to make you do stuff, and he didn't succumb to it. So, there's lots of positives to take away there. It was a tense Monaco, which is always what I'm looking for. At least it was tense. But it wasn't, I never had the thought of, unless somebody screwed it up, or we had some other safety car intervention, I never thought the race itself was ever going to kick off, and it just kind of ended kind of where it was. But sometimes you have that. I don't know that I want to do the trope of how would you improve Monaco. We kind of already talked about that in the preview. I think that there's a lot of ideas out there. I think there's hopefully from what I've seen and read, it seems like everybody's of the same opinion that something's got to give. So let's figure out what's got to give, whether that's a tire, whether that's a certain spec of car, because this is a racetrack that has a lot of meaning for a lot of places. And it is integral in the history of Formula One, and it's something that we shouldn't just go away from. I don't want to ever be we shouldn't just drop it from the calendar. That's just not how we should operate. And I watch the historics and I say, there's places where you can overtake and you can make moves if you have the cars that can do it. So maybe the 26 cars are a step in the right direction. Obviously, they're not going to be quite as large as this generation of cars. But I sure hope that they start thinking and even try to get a little creative. I'm willing to try a tinkering here where maybe in other places I might be more of a traditionalist and say, no, you can't touch it.
Per se.
All right. So that concludes the actual review. We're going to take a quick break. We'll recap what all this did to the driver, which has some shakeups in it, and the team standings, which has some shakeup in it as well. We'll open it up to your thoughts on what you saw this weekend in the fan email segment. We've got some good results here. We'll talk about awards. I've got a couple good ones. My rubbish and my analysis paralysis are pretty good. A little bit spicy if you want to think about it. We'll talk about predictions. We didn't have our safety blanket of Max on pole, so you'll have to see what happens with the predictions because they got a little interesting this weekend. And then before we head on out, we are going to talk about the other race that we had to wait a little while for, but damn, was it worth the wait. The Indy 500's on the docket as well. So come on back. We'll get into all that in just a little bit. All right. Welcome back in. This is season 6. This is episode number 18 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's the 2024 Monaco / Indy 500 review show. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight. And we just wrapped up the Monaco portion of the review. So what we're going to do now is we're going to recap what that did to all of the driver standings and the team standings. So, Cody, if you want to take the drivers, I'll chip in with the teams.
Sounds great. So in first place in the driver standings, still, it's Max Verstappen. He is in first Red Bull at 169 points. However, the gap between first and second has closed up a little bit. I got to say, it's based on the first couple races of this season, it's closer than I thought it would have been at this point. Second place after that victory is still Charles Leclerc for Ferrari. He is at 138 points, so only 31 behind Max for the moment. It's a full race victory, but still not insurmountable. Third place, Lando Norris from McLaren, performing very well so far. He's at 113 points. Fourth place, Carlos Sainz for Ferrari, also performing very well. He's at 108 points, which means he now overtakes Sergio Perez in the standings. Sergio Perez is in fifth place for Red Bull at 107 points. And then a little bit of a gap down still to Oscar Piastri, who got really good points this race. Oscar's in sixth with McLaren at 71 points. George Russell, the first of the two Mercedes drivers, is in seventh with 54 points. Lewis Hamilton just behind him in the other Mercedes at 42 points. And then Fernando Alonso in ninth place with Aston Martin at 33 points. And then in 10th place, Yuki Tsunoda squeezing his way into the top 10 in points. Very consistent as of late in that V-Carb car. He sits in 10th with 19 points.
Yeah, so I guess the trope question, do you think championship is back on, or do we need another data point yet?
I think we've seen some strange things so far this season. I think it looks good on paper. I think it's still going to be a pretty clear Red Bull victory, especially in the drivers. Because if you look at the races that Max hasn't won so far, you've got Australia, where he probably could have won had his brakes not failed at the very beginning of the race. You look at Miami, where he probably could have won if he hadn't, damaged his car with the bollard, and then, a well-timed safety car that put Lando Norris into the lead. And then you look at Monaco. Well, Monaco's kind of an odd one out anyway, because it's all about the qualifying. I will say that it was very promising how close the qualifying was, and the fact that the Ferraris and McLarens were able to qualify him. But there's lots of track evolution. You can't really pass, so we don't really know what he could have done if it was a more conventional circuit where you could pass. All that to say that I think it's still Red Bull's to lose, and I think we're probably going to see that as we get back to the more conventional circuits.
Yeah, it's tempting. I was in our national show YouTube chat. I was trying to float the idea of, well, damn, look at this. This might be championship on, and got in a good conversation with another guy who said, talk to me in 3 races time, and I think that's fair. I actually think that's really fair. This can sometimes Monaco can mask a lot of team warts in certain places, or can expose them in others in a unique way that is only going to happen here. I've left Monaco many times, and I've said, oh, well, if you can carry it forward, and then you get to the next race and it's all reset to kind of where back to normal, service resumed. So if they are struggling again in Canada, which is a much different circuit, one where Red Bull has dominated the last couple of years, then I would say, oh, now this is actually doing something, and maybe we've got something, something's a brewing here. I'm not quite ready to say championship on, let's let LFG yet. But it is interesting to see that the math is not as bad as it once looked. So let's take that for what it is. There have to be more of these, especially when we get to the constructors, because you look at the constructors looks pretty darn tight between these top two now. Red Bull Racing Powertrains continues to lead. They are up to 276 points, but Ferrari now is in the rearview mirror within a Grand Prix point haul. So I would say game on here. They check in with 252 points after their awesome P1 and P3 in Monaco. McLaren are up to 184 points. Kind of now in kind of an island now. They actually lose ground, believe it or not, to Ferrari a little bit here. So it's going to be really tough for them math-wise to get back into this fight. That having been said, if they can capitalize and one of these teams has an off weekend, maybe they're back in it. But I'm not ready to put McLaren into the constructors. That's a bit of a pipe dream yet, but they're solid P3 for sure. P4 is Mercedes. They check in now with 96 points. P5 is Aston Martin. They are on 44 points. P6 is the VCARB team, establishing themselves firmly in that P6 now, up to 24 points. Thank you very much, Yuki Tsunoda. P7, Haas Ferrari check in still with the 7 points. P8 off the donut is now Williams. They have now 2 points thanks to Alex Albon's P9 here. And P9 is Alpine. They get an extra point. They have doubled their total from 1 to 2, and that leaves the Kick Sauber team, who brought a lot of upgrades apparently to Monaco, and not a lot of them worked very well. So, yeesh, maybe more pain in store for that team. Carlos Sainz is watching. They remain on 0 points. Yeesh. All right, so we will now move into my favorite segment of the show, the fan email segment. You've heard our takes on what you saw this weekend. It's now time to get your reaction to what you saw this weekend in the F1 world. We've got our normal people who have been so nice as to give us a thought or two. We'll start always with Rachel Fleming. Then we've got the formula, and Mr. Dave Doherty has also chimed in as well. So, Cody, it's your time to shine here. What you got?
All right. Our first email comes from Rachel Fleming. Thank you, Rachel. She says, well, that was a brilliant race until K-Mag decided to take out Sergio Perez and his teammate. Not impressed by the stewards not even looking at that incident, but I suppose the Haas team were probably more angry than anything else. If this continues for K-Mag, would a question come up about even lasting the rest of the season, let alone getting a seat for next season? But that is nothing compared to the anger at Alpine for Ocon. I can't realistically see Alpine benching Ocon in Canada, but the words coming out of the team suggest that this cannot continue. I don't think that the red flag changing tires rules would have made any difference in this race, so I was going to rant about this, but it wasn't a Red Bull 1-2, and it was becoming Hooplink's first, so I will live with it. It certainly helps George Russell. But what a result for Williams and Albon. Qualifying is key here, and now it only leaves Stake Sauber on 0 points. That will not impress anyone at Audi at all. And finally, Charles winning his home race and having Ferrari and McLaren as the top 4 cars. Have we turned back time to 2007? I love that last little bit. It does seem a little strange to look at this race and be like, the top performing years were Ferrari and McLaren after the last, 10, 15 years about now? 15 years, I think, being dominated by Red Bull and Mercedes.
Yep.
It's crazy how long it's been since these guys have truly been in the mix. I guess Ferrari a little bit in 2017, 18, 19, but McLaren definitely a long way ahead of where they were about 10 years ago. Lots of good points here. As far as my take on Alpine benching Ocon, I agree with you, Rachel, that I don't really think it's going to happen. I think it's rumors going around because of things that were said in anger at the incident. The other thing, though, the other option is, I would say if they do bench him, it's not only because of what happened in Monaco. I would think if they're benching Ocon, it goes a step further, that there's things going on behind the scenes at Alpine that are affecting the relationship between the team and Ocon. There's been a lot of rumors going around that he is not wanting his seat at Alpine, and he is shopping around for different teams, seeing if there's anywhere he can realistically move to. I don't really blame him. He's been at that team forever, and they continue to struggle to fight their way, into even like an upper midfield team, as we're seeing this year. But yeah, I would say if they actually bench him, there's definitely more going on. I think the pit stop strategy could have spiced up the race at least a little bit, because we've seen it with Daniel Ricciardo, we've seen it with Valtteri Bottas, where it only takes one botched pit stop and your race complexion is completely changed. Daniel Ricciardo was on to win his first Monaco Grand Prix victory when a poor pit stop ruined that for him. Valtteri Bottas having a decent race, his race completely ruined by not being able to get the wheel nut off. So just the chance of something like that happening, to me, would have been enough to really spice things up and change the complexion of the race. And we were kind of robbed of that by the red flag happening so early in the race. Even if you got to the point where it was, if the red flag happened, like say halfway through the race, it probably still would have ruined the rest of the race from that point on, because everyone would have gotten fresh tires and that would have been the end of it. But you could have at least had something happen before that. So the fact the red flag came out on lap 1 really took any strategy out the window. Great race for Albon. I really like Albon because he seems to be, now that he is in the Williams car, we've been seeing it for a couple of seasons now, that he is the type that can really extract a lot from a car, so long as it's, something he can work with. We seem to see that he wasn't maybe getting the attention he needed at Red Bull. I'm not really sure what it was. Maybe the car was a little too much on the knife's edge. But here at Williams, he is really shining. He's extracting pretty much everything he can get from the car and getting those points where he can. And that's the most Williams can hope for right now, because they're struggling a little bit, and every point counts.
Yeah, any points for Williams is gravy. I'm pretty sure James Vowles is already kind of resigned to the fact that they're probably not getting the same constructor money that they've had become a little more accustomed to when they got P7 last year. given the decisions they made and given how, especially the first few races of this season have played out. So yeah, that's gravy for them and good to see. I've talked about, Gasly making Q3. He was very happy. That was a good moment. Again, something you do like to see. The nice thing about the 10 teams that we have is we don't have anybody for plus seconds off the back. So it doesn't take much for one of those teams to maybe punch a little bit above their weight. And Monaco is a track where, like, if you don't have the best engine or you don't have the best aero, it doesn't necessarily matter because your driver can make the difference. So that's good. It makes it, like I said earlier, a little bit more of a democratic result than in some other places as well. So those are good things. I'm in agreement with you, Rachel, about, why do you investigate one lap, one incident, and not even look at the other one? So I would agree. I'm not impressed with that. I think the internal thing at Haas, I tend to agree with that point as well. We talked a lot about the anger for Ocon from coming on to Alpine, what the options potentially are. I think this is going to be one of those where I think Bruno Famin is going to lord this over Ocon for the next week and a half and then eventually back down. Probably because now I could, of course, be proven wrong. The second I see a blockbuster thing, then I'll just eat these words. But I think he wants to just come out and say, hey, look, I'm the guy that's in charge. Just understand that I can do this. Strike 2.5. Anything else, and I'm pulling the trigger on it. If he does pull, because I do think everyone will calm down a little bit. It was bad. It was stupid. Not a great move. Short-sighted, but not egregiously bad. It just didn't work out. I think, compared to what Magnussen did or didn't do, it's kind of around the same par. So, I think they should have been looked at in the same vein, either from the stewards or from their teams as well. So yeah, thanks, Rachel, for being right on it, and always enjoy your feedback.
Mm-hmm. Our next email comes from the Formula. Thank you for chiming in. And they said, I'll keep it brief. Yay, Charles. Boo, Esteban. Checo, that's what you get when you get out-qualified by Logan Sargent. Very succinct. I love it. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered all those points pretty thoroughly. Definitely agree with Yay, Charles. Definitely, mostly agree with the Boo, Esteban. Yeah, Checo, poor qualifying, as we discussed at the beginning. Looks worse in Monaco. Doesn't look so bad when you look at the gap between him and his teammate. But you still can't deny that he was out-qualified by, everyone except for a couple drivers. And one of those drivers he was out-qualified by was Logan Sargent in the Williams. That's, I guess, a good point on Logan that he was able to do that. It was a very close margin. But he at least Logan Sargent can now say that in his career in Formula One, he was able to out-qualify a Red Bull, which is good for something.
Yeah, this is a very succinct way of kind of summing up the entirety of the 78 laps that we got. Yeah, I really can't put it much better. It did make me chuckle, so thank you, Mr. Formula, again for your contribution. And our last one comes from Dave Doherty, and I'll take this one. He said, the race was amazing. What are your thoughts? Is this the beginning of a three-way championship fight between Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren? He also says, I love your show. You are the best. I hope you enjoyed this race as much as I did. I loved the Saturday, and I loved Monaco as an event is amazing. There's so much happening. There's craziness, and from people who I have talked to in their lives who've been there, it is a totally other culture to be there and in the stands, and the energy is a certain way. Some of that comes through across on the TV screen, and some of it doesn't. The qualifying is absolutely appointment television. You can sink that into my veins. I had 4 different screens. I had both McLaren onboards going at the same time. I had a timing screen. I had, social media going. I had the main screen that had different feeds at different timings of it, so I could, catch it all. So, I am all for loving the venue. I love the atmosphere. I love the energy. I love the history. We got to do something about the racing, though. It's got, like I said before, we are smart people who work there are smart people who work in the sport. I am confident that they can figure that out. I can enjoy a race that doesn't have a whole lot of overtaking, but it just seemed the perfect storm of what led to just a frustrating watch, even from the onboards, which is usually what I enjoy a lot more if the basic coverage isn't all that great. But in terms of the three-way championship fight, I'm not ready to declare that yet. I think we need a couple more data points. It's interesting that Red Bull have not been their dominant selves, but I've said this before. The math would say that there was almost no way that Red Bull were going to be able to repeat the dominance of last year. And hopefully what comes out of this is, even if they do win this year, that it's not as dominant, because that 2023 season should be revered for the outlier and the greatness that it was for them. If they just backed it up and did it again, that gets diminished. And I don't want to see that. And I'm not rooting against Red Bull, but I'm rooting for a fight. Balls in Ferrari and McLaren's court to see what can happen over these next. The good news is, over the next few rounds, the good news is there are plenty of rounds left in this season where the math can turn. I do see Ferrari now firmly in the mirror of Red Bull. I don't see McLaren firmly in the rear mirror of Ferrari yet with the math. Ferrari has to have a bad weekend and McLaren has to have a great weekend, and then that can turn. But if this is a primer to next season where you reset it all and then you're just keeping these same rules packages, next year it's on. I think it's on from jump next year amongst these three, and boy, is that going to be fun.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be fantastic. We're going to be hitting that plateau of performance that we see at the end of regulations, where everyone's kind of extracting as much as they can out of the regs. I do think it'll be a really close go next year between Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren, and there's a lot of really hungry drivers at those teams. So I think it's going to be very exciting. Thank you, Dave, very much for the comment that you love the show. It is really awesome, to know that there are, we have several people here who are regular contributors to the email segment, and it's great to know that you guys, are listening, that we have actual fans out there. It's very, very nice, very heartwarming. As far as your comments on the race being amazing and that you hope we enjoyed the race as much as you did, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic. That type of thing gets lost over emails. If you did actually find the race amazing and thoroughly enjoyed it, that is awesome. I'm happy that you enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first lap, and I enjoyed the last lap. But the 76 or so in the middle were a little boring for me. I will say, though, that at least for Monaco, I did stay awake for the whole race, which I cannot say about Imola. So I guess there's something to be said for the Monaco factor there.
All right. Well, thank you again to all of our contributors in the fan email segment. I do enjoy everyone's feedback, as always. And if you'd like to do that, just shoot us a DM right after the race or reply to the tweet we put out. We love to get feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, and we like to react to it. So if you love the show, that's awesome. We're definitely appreciative of that. Dave's always awesome on social media, retweeting our stuff and spreading it out there. So we appreciate all of the support from everybody who likes to contribute to the show, as always. So we will now transition and we will move into our awards, and we shall start with what goes in the rubbish bin. Cody, I'll let you go first here. I like what you got. What you got?
My rubbish award goes to the first lap shenanigans as a whole. We had 2 teammate destroying incidents before the first half of a lap was completed. We had the Madison incident take out Nico Hulkenberg, and we had the Ocon incident take out Ocon. So, but almost take out Gasly as well. And yeah, a lot of controversy coming from both of those incidents. Who's at fault, who's not, who deserves a penalty, who doesn't. It destroyed the strategy for the race, made this probably the most boring Monaco race that I've seen. So yeah, that whole factor goes into the rubbish bin.
Yeah, very good there. So mine is a little bit about the track, but not about the layout, not about the fact that you can't overtake. Mine is about the advertising wraps. And every circuit has these where, in one way or another, where there's either a painted thing of wood or that's nailed to the barrier. But in Monaco, they elected to go with these. Now, I don't know if I think it's derivative of plastic or something like that, where, the
like
advertising.
Shrink wrap.
Yeah, shrink wrap or something that was like adhered to the barrier. Well, we have ground effect cars that get right up against the wall, and the ground effect cars suck air into it. What did you think was going to happen here? And happen it did. You saw it even in the first practice. You had all this debris that would come out. The closer you got to the wall, the more it would pull on the advertising, and the advertising would literally rip off and create a problem. And it was getting into, certain parts of cars. And the worst part of it was in Q1, where a big old chunk of it ends up in Lando Norris's front wing and almost put him out because of it. Now, I agree that Monaco has the glitz and the glam and all of that history behind it, and this is supposed to be the gold standard. We can do better than advertising shrink wrap in 2024. I'm watching the NHL playoffs, and one of the things that, and I don't love this, but they do it and it works, is they've almost perfected virtual ads that you can only see on TV that cycle throughout the course of the weekend on the boards during a hockey game. If we can have that technology, and they've actually figured it out to where if the puck hits it, it doesn't scramble and it doesn't do anything weird. And, unless you're not, eventually your eye will get used to it. Why can't we do something like that here? I get people want to have advertisements around the biggest and most prestigious track on the calendar. It's got to be better than shrink wrap, man, because that obviously doesn't work with these cars. Yuck.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Okay, so we will move on to our analysis paralysis. Of the 6 pit stops we had, I don't know that there was a lot to pick from, but we've done a good job of trying to come up with something. Cody, I think you've got one of the 6 pit stops on your list here, so what do you have?
I do. My analysis paralysis is Mercedes not telling Hamilton that his outlap was critical in order to get past Verstappen. It really seemed like wasted effort on Mercedes' part. It did at least seem to me like a legitimate chance of making one of the few overtakes, probably one of the only pit stop undercuts of the undercut, overcut. I always get them mixed up of the entire race, and it didn't happen. And it seems like the onus is on the team because they didn't push Hamilton hard enough, didn't let him know that he needed to push harder in order to potentially gain that position. And it's just they're missing out on points that they might have been able to gain.
Yep. All right. Very good. I like that. So mine is going to go out here now to my friends at the FIA. We haven't had one of these in a while. So you're going to tell me that the lap 1 incident that destroys 3 separate cars doesn't get looked at, but the Ocon move, which is stupid and probably deserves a penalty, on the same lap not only gets looked at, but gets a 5-place penalty at the next race? And oh yeah, the car he hit not only kept going, but scored in the points. This is maddeningly inconsistent. Does not make sense. Try explaining that to someone who was watching Monaco for the first time. They see 3 cars destroyed, nothing happens. You see 1 car destroy itself, that dude gets the penalty, and the other car goes on and finishes the race and is fine. Doesn't add up. I can't explain it, so I don't get it. So analysis paralysis, FIA for you here.
It does really feel like it's been a while, which I guess is a good thing. It does seem like it's been a while since you really had an award that tore into the FIA.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had one like that in a while, but this one was just like, it just, the fact that I was getting into arguments with people about it where I'm like, no, they can't be referring to that one. They have to look at the Magnuson thing. And that, no, I don't have the document yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to say that they're not looking at the Magnuson thing, because that's what they chose to do. Again, it makes it very difficult when you're trying to explain this to somebody who hasn't seen it before, why something happens the way that it does. And I don't like that. But anyway, I'll leave that there. We'll move on to our Dark Horse Award, which we can almost rename it the AKA Yuki Tsunoda Award. But I'm going to give this one to Pierre Gasly for making Q3 in that Alpine and for scoring a point for that team that hasn't had a whole lot to celebrate in spite of the Alpine on Alpine violence. So good on you, Pierre. Here, Cody, what you got for Dark Horse?
I will make this the Yuki Tsunoda Award, at least this week, because he really, this season seems to be kind of the definition of a dark horse season. And, not a super great car, comfortably midfield car, but he always seems to be consistently getting into that P8, P9, P10, points paying positions. And he is responsible for the vast amount of the Hall points that VCarb has been able to get. And to top it all off, by finishing P8 in this race, he did get me a point in our predictions game. So if anything, he gets the award for that.
And as we're going to talk about, it's a significant point.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we will now move into our driver of the day before we recap those lovely predictions. I think we have universal acceptance here. I don't know the theme song to Charles in Charge, otherwise I would sing it. But Charles was in charge all weekend. He was the best driver around Monaco from FP1 all the way to the end of the weekend. He was the deserved winner, the best car, the best driver all weekend by far, with some margin to spare. So well-deserved victory at home. Third time was the lucky charm for him. He got it done third time on the pole for Charles Leclerc in Monaco.
Mm-hmm.
Cody, what you got?
My driver of the day is also going to go to Chuck Leclerc. Managed the race to perfection. He got the pole, the first thing he needed to do, and then he managed the full 78. Like we said, virtually on one set of tires for the entire race, which he did very well. He did not miss a beat. And I did love some of the radio banter that we heard kind of getting to the close of the race, because it did occur to me as we were getting close to the end that he had the potential to get a Grand Chelem, because he had already gotten the pole. He had, appeared to be like he was going to win and lead every lap of the race. And so the only thing left that he needed for that Grand Chelem was the fastest lap. And he kind of indirectly was asking the team about it, trying to see like, hey, what's the margin? Is this something I can go for? And the team was like, no, we're not interested. And he's like, Coffee, was that a no? No, we're not interested. Just bring it home. Yeah, so I guess maybe a tiny bit disappointment that he couldn't really I don't think the margin was there. I think what was it? Lewis Hamilton had the fastest lap, and he had it on fresh tires by some margin. So it was unlikely that Leclerc was going to be able to put in a lap at that point in the race on those tires to get the fastest lap anyway. So yeah, a little too bad that he couldn't put this together into a Grand Chelem in Monaco. But considering that it looked like it was a long shot anyway, I don't blame the team for being like, don't even think about it. Just bring it home. You don't want to be the guy that's like, oh yeah, and the Monaco curse was on me this time because I had it in the bag and I just wanted it that tiny bit more. So didn't go for it, but overall, I'm sure he can be very happy with what he did achieve.
Yeah, absolutely agree there. All right, so we will move into our prediction results. And when Max Verstappen isn't on pole and doesn't take the race win, these prediction results tend to go a little sideways. So neither of us had the pole sitter. Neither of us had any of the podium in the right order. That's for sure. So yeah, these are pretty shambolic results. I only had 1 point. I only had Lewis Hamilton as the fastest lap driver. Yay. Look at that. But Cody, you eke out 3 points. You did get that Yuki Tsunoda P8 bonus pick. You got the fastest quali time, even though it was a second off. It was slower, but it was closer than mine. And you got the fastest lap time. Same kind of deal, even though we were both off, but you were closer to it than I was. So I guess we were flirting with track records, and that was not what either of us thought was going to happen. There was no weather involvement, so none of that ever came to fruition. So yeah, but good job on the predictions. You were the best of the worst of us this weekend. All right, so just looking at the timing of kind of the segments, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a second break. We're going to break here. We're going to kind of leave Monaco kind of as it is, and when we come back, we are going to. So if you done with the Monaco GP review and that's all you wanted to get out of tonight's stuff, that's cool. No issue there. May all your laps be fast. But we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the other jewel in the Triple Crown, the Indy 500, which, boy, that has some chef's kiss stuff at the end there, man. Pump that into my veins. So come on back. You will enjoy our discussion of the Indy 500 for sure. So come on back.